All right, welcome everyone. Today, we're going to tackle two really big ideas. And I mean, ideas that could completely change how you think about what it means to get money, and maybe more importantly, what you do with it once you have it. So let's start with a question. A belief that I think a lot of us have deep down. To get rich, you have to be some kind of genius, right? You've got to make these brilliant, perfect decisions one after another, and then the reward is, well, the fancy cars, the big house, a life of luxury. But what if that's just not true? What if the actual math behind building wealth is a whole lot weirder and a lot more forgiving? And what if the ultimate prize, the real reason to want money, isn't what we've been told it is? Okay, let's dive into this first big idea. So, our first reality check is this idea called tails you win. This comes from a concept in statistics known as long tails, and it's a powerful one. Basically, it means that a tiny number of events are responsible for almost all of the results. Here's the best way to think about it. Most things that happen, well, they're kind of average, right? They're forgettable. But then there are these few huge outlier events. Those are the tails. And they are so powerful that they end up defining the entire story. And you see this everywhere once you start looking for it. Take art dealing. The legendary dealers, they kind of operate like an index fund. They buy tons and tons of art, knowing full well that 99% of it is going to be worthless. But they also know that just one or two of those pieces might be a Picasso, and that one masterpiece will pay for all the duds and then some. Or how about Disney? Back in the 30s, they had made something like 400 cartoons, and most of them were losing money. The studio was struggling. Then, they released one 83-minute film, Snow White. It was such a colossal hit that it single-handedly saved the entire company. That is a tail event. This is literally the entire business model for venture capital. I mean, just look at this chart. That huge bar on the left, that's about 65% of their investments. They lose money. Gone. But it doesn't even matter. Why? Because you look way over on the right. That tiny sliver, just 0.5% of their deals, those are the ones that go 50x or more. And that little group generates pretty much all of the industry's profits. It's wild. Okay, so right about now, you're probably thinking, sure, that makes sense for risky startups and venture capital, but what about the regular stock market, the boring stuff? Well, it turns out the exact same principle is at play. Take a look at this donut chart. It's pretty staggering. A study looked at the Russell 3000 index from 1980 to 2016, and what it found was that basically all of the stock market's positive returns came from just 7% of the companies. The other 93%? Their combined return was basically zero or negative. Let that sink in. The success of the entire market was driven by a tiny handful of superstar companies. And hey, if you need more proof, just listen to the master himself. Warren Buffett once said he's owned 400 or 500 stocks in his life, but he made most of his money on just 10 of them. 10. Even the greatest investor of all time admits his incredible track record comes down to a few huge winners. So what does this all mean for us? Well, the most crucial lesson is that we are way too hard on ourselves when we fail. In any area that's driven by these tail events, like investing, being wrong most of the time isn't just okay, it's actually the norm. It's expected. The goal isn't to be right all the time, it's just to stay in the game long enough to catch one of those incredible tailwinds. Okay, so that's the how. Getting wealthy is often about surviving a lot of small losses to catch a few massive wins. But that brings us to the second big question. Why? What's the money really for? Is the goal just to have more stuff, a bigger house, a faster car? Well, a psychologist named Angus Campbell did some fascinating research on this. He studied what actually makes people happy. And you know what he found? The single biggest factor wasn't a high salary or where you live or your social status. Nope. The most dependable predictor of happiness was having a strong sense of control over your own life. And that right there is the whole point. The greatest thing money can buy, the highest dividend it pays, is control over your time. It's not about the fancy stuff. It's about waking up and getting to say, you know what, I can do whatever I want today. That's the real prize. And the great thing is, you don't have to be a billionaire for this to matter. Every little bit of savings you build up buys you another layer of freedom, another piece of independence. It means you can take a sick day without stressing about money. It means you can leave a job you hate to find one you actually love. It's about having options and taking back control of your own life, piece by piece.
But this leads to a pretty big puzzle, doesn't it? As a society, we're richer than we have ever been in human history. So why aren't we happier? Why haven't our happiness levels gone up along with our bank accounts?
Well, part of the answer might be what's called the modern work trap. See, for a lot of us, we've kind of traded that control over our time for a higher salary. Think about it. Back in the 1950s, if you worked in a factory, your tools stayed at the factory. When you clocked out, work was over. But today, most of us are knowledge workers. Our tool is our brain. And you can't exactly leave your brain at the office, right? It feels like we're always on, 24/7. And if you want to know what really matters in the end, just listen to the people who've lived the longest. A study interviewed 1,000 elderly Americans about their biggest life lessons. And you know what's incredible? Not a single one of them said that the key to happiness was to work as hard as possible just to buy more things. Not one. Instead, they all talked about quality friendships, being part of something bigger, and spending time with their kids. They valued their time.
Okay, so let's bring these two huge ideas together. Let's combine the how with the why and forge a new financial goal.
So here's the new goal. The strategy is to accept that there will be lots of small, normal failures because you're playing the long game to capture one or two of those massive tailwinds. And the purpose, the why, is to take the money from those wins and use it to buy the ultimate prize, absolute control over your time. Not more stuff, more freedom.
And that's really the big idea we want to leave you with today. What if we've been measuring wealth all wrong this whole time? What if the true measure of wealth isn't the number in your bank account, but the number of mornings you get to wake up and have complete control over your day? It's something to think about. Thanks for joining.